I typically start at the piano, either at the piano or just walking, but I start with very simple melodic, motivic ideas or even just a textural idea. I just need to start with some kind of a building block that I'm excited about. And then I tend to obsess over that building block, and I get other ideas for other building blocks that I think might work with it. And then I take a whole lot of walks, and I think about how those materials can relate to each other. And then I get new ideas on the walks, and I sing them into my phone and record them. And then I go back home and work at the computer and turn them upside down and manipulate them and see all the different things they're capable of doing that my brain doesn't hear intuitively. And um, yeah, from there I sort of somehow build a piece. So it's a lot of singing and listening and walking and thinking. A lot of walking, yeah. I'm very interested in narrative and storytelling. And I think all of my music, whether the influences are drawing pretty exclusively from the classical side of my background or from the less classical side of my background, I grew up listening to a lot of pop and rock and folk music, and sometimes that finds its way more into what I'm writing than in another case. But whatever I'm writing, I think it's always about story for me and communication and connecting with a listener emotionally. And I'm interested in trying to create vivid, characterful narratives where the what I'm saying is clear, hopefully. And this was something that I talked about a lot with my teachers in graduate school, because at the time they were encouraging me to be less clear, because that was not considered to be very fashionable, to be direct and to be clear and articulate about emotional things. It was just, yeah, they wanted more subterfuge and obfuscation and, foils for every intellectual foils for every emotional idea. And, I like to do that in my own way, but I also want the average listener to feel like they can connect with my music. I don't want it to be music for a specialized, knowledgeable audience. So I'm very interested in just saying something earnestly and directly as much as I can. So I think that's probably the through line, the to all of my music, if there is one. I can't finish a piece unless I'm happy with how it's come to a conclusion. And so or maybe I've just lucked out and been happy at the end. I don't know, but I find that um, it's like not a it's not musical stories I think of as very different from any other kind of story. And so when I'm telling like a musical story, I'm not thinking of painting like a necessarily a linear kind of narrative, but it might be abstract and imagistic. So it might not feel like it comes to a specific kind of conclusion, but if it's a conclusion that makes sense for the images that I've put forward, or the internal logic of the narrative that's there, then I feel okay about it. It's just a certain feeling of rightness when you reach an end, like you want to have that feeling of rightness. And if I don't have that feeling of rightness, then I need to ask for a few more days, from the commissioner, because I have a really hard time. Yeah, I need to get that feeling of rightness. Yeah, to let go of a piece. Yeah, I think it is a discovery process. I mean, I often don't know where I'm going with a piece. I mean, I'll think I know where I'm going, but then the music takes me somewhere else. And I get to the end of a piece and I think, oh, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but I actually like it more than than the original thing I had in my head, or I'm not sad that it didn't go the way I thought. If I'm sad that it didn't go the way I thought, then it would have taken a different direction earlier, like I'm always led by this feeling of rightness. And so the music knows what it wants to do more than the composer does, I think. And you get in there and you're working with your materials and they tell you things about where they want to go and what they want to do. And I just try to listen to that and follow that. And yeah, rarely does a piece turn out the way I think, which is always a problem when I have to write a program note before the piece is finished. Because sometimes I'll write a program note and then like the piece will take this radical left turn or do something, otherwise unexpected. And I'm like, well, I should change the program note now. It's actually more about this. And so, yeah, I think for me, it very much is a process of discovery. But I love that about composing. Like that's part of why I love composing is that there's this magic and mystery to it for me, and um, I had this teacher one time that said like, oh, you should always know what you're doing when you're composing. And I know what he meant. And like, I think he meant theoretically, you should be able to talk about it. But to a certain extent, I love the feeling of being lost and not thinking not about what it is theoretically that I'm doing, like what mode or key I'm in or where I've been or, where I should go next, but just lost in the I don't know, the dream of it, the emotion of it and the lost in the world of the piece and carried away by the music. That's when I know that I'm at my best. That's when I feel like I write my best music is when I'm just lost in it. I think about this a lot because I have done this a few times. Like with this, I wrote this song cycle called Unremembered a few years ago, and the first 5 songs were commissioned by Roomful of Teeth, and then the poet who had written the lyrics for the songs wrote me like 30 more poems just because he had the desire internally to do so. And he sent them to me he was like, this is just for fun, but I was so taken with these poems, and I didn't have a commissioner to write more of the songs, but I just really wanted to. I heard all this music, and he had sent me all these drawings that went with the poems, and it was this fascinating world. And so I was like, I'm just going to do this on my own. I'm just going to write the rest of these songs. And it's really interesting what happens to you as a composer, I think, when you're writing just for yourself. You engage with the music different, at least I do. I engage with the music differently when I'm thinking about the commissioner of a piece, like what they might be looking for, or if I'm writing for a soloist or an ensemble. Invariably, I'm thinking about, their values and what they're good at and what they're best at, and I want to flatter them and write for them. And when you're just in your room writing like for yourself ostensibly, then it's almost like you're just writing in a journal or a diary, and you're in this private space with your musical headphones on and a candle or whatever, just some intimate dark room, and nobody's watching, and this other side of your personality comes out. And I don't know, it was a really interesting experience for me because the music that came out was stylistically pretty different from what I'd been writing. And it made me think like, I should do this more often. Maybe this is saying something about what needs to come out or who I really am, or, when nobody's watching. So I think it's a great thing for composers to do is whenever they can. Yeah. I think it's always changing. I have a favorite 10 seconds right now, but it's a recent piece, and I don't know if I would feel that way like in a few months when, or next year when I hopefully I right now I'm very proud of this mass that I just finished, and I just recorded it, and so it's in my head a lot because I've been having to now promote this work and write about it, and um, there's this one movement of it that I feel really happy with, and um, but then I wrote this other orchestra piece last year. I haven't heard it performed yet, and I'm really excited to hear that. And I sort of think that when I hear that, that might become my favorite child. It's always changing. It's sort of the most recent thing that fascinates me in music, and so it doesn't even feel like it's really crediting me. It's more like here's what kind of musical devices and gestures fascinate me in general right now. And yeah, so it happens to be this canonic section of this choral piece that I wrote, but I'm sure it'll be something else in a few months. Yeah. I thought when I was in college that I was either going to become a I thought I was either going to go into public sector legal work, or into some kind of social work or therapy. I majored in psychology and sociology. I didn't major in music, and so yeah, I thought I was either going to save the world in some way or help people or something along those lines. But I found that music was always in my head and it was calling me all the time. But I wonder if, even if music hadn't been there, I wonder if I would have been satisfied by the other work, because I do love the process of making things and so much. And I think I would have needed to make things in order to be really fulfilled and happy. That said, I think, obviously the process of being a therapist or a lawyer or whatever can be incredibly imaginative and inventive. And there's so many ways to make an impact on the world in that way. So maybe it would have been fulfilling in a different way. But um, yeah, it's funny. I tried my hand at the other thing. Like I was late to composition. I mean, I was always composing, but I was late to committing to it as a profession. I was afraid of it. And um, I tried so hard to like do the lawyer thing or the public sector legal work. I was a paralegal for a number of years, and I just had music stuck in my head all the time, and it literally drove me crazy. And so well, not literally, but almost. um so it's hard for me to imagine like being in another body, how that not having that obsessive music. Then I could maybe imagine like, oh, be a veterinarian or a librarian or a doctor. All of that would be amazing, because it's just like I have this, obsessively musical brain. So it's hard to imagine, but